Deep in the Bavarian countryside, a farmstead held secrets that would challenge every assumption about what humanity is capable of enduring. The official records speak of a family massacre, but the evidence suggests something far more disturbing than simple murder. What happened at Hinterkaifeck defies rational explanation, leaving investigators to confront the possibility that some acts of violence transcend the boundaries of human comprehension. But first, subscribe to be notified about every new unexplained case. It was March 31st, 1922, in the remote farming community near Hinterkaifeck, Bavaria. The Gruber farmstead sat isolated among rolling hills, its weathered timber walls bearing witness to generations of quiet rural life. Andreas Gruber, a 63-year-old farmer, had worked this land for decades alongside his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, and her two children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph. The discovery came when neighbors noticed that none of the family had been seen for several days. Mail accumulated in the wooden box by the gate, and the usual sounds of farm life had fallen silent. When concerned villagers finally approached the property, they found the barn door standing open, revealing a scene that would haunt investigators for generations. The bodies of Andreas, his wife, daughter, and granddaughter lay arranged in the barn's hayloft, covered with straw and farm tools. Each victim had suffered massive blunt force trauma to the head, delivered with methodical precision. The infant Joseph and the family's maid, Maria Baumgartner, were discovered in the farmhouse itself, their deaths equally brutal. Initial examination revealed disturbing details that elevated this beyond a typical rural homicide. The killer had remained on the property for several days after the murders, living among the corpses while maintaining the farm's daily routines. Fresh milk had been consumed, fires had been lit in the hearths, and the livestock had been fed and watered with mechanical regularity. Evidence suggested the perpetrator had slept in the family's beds and prepared meals in their kitchen. Footprints in the snow showed someone had walked the property's perimeter each morning, as if conducting a methodical patrol. The killer had even responded to visitors, sending away a delivery man and the postmaster without arousing immediate suspicion. Andreas Gruber had confided to neighbors in the weeks before his death about strange occurrences on the property. Unfamiliar footprints had appeared in the snow, leading from the forest to the house but never returning. He had discovered these tracks on multiple occasions, always following the same path, always ending at the kitchen door. The farmer had also reported hearing footsteps in the attic during the night, slow and deliberate movements that suggested someone walking back and forth above the family's bedrooms. When he investigated, he found the attic empty, but the floorboards showed signs of recent disturbance, and the dust had been swept away in neat, parallel lines. Most disturbing was Andreas's account of keys disappearing and reappearing in different locations throughout the house. The main door key had vanished from its hook, only to be found days later, placed carefully on the kitchen table. Other keys followed the same pattern, suggesting someone had been systematically accessing different areas of the property. The previous maid had quit her position just months before the murders, claiming she heard voices in the walls and felt constantly watched. Maria Baumgartner had only started working for the family the day before the killings, arriving to what she could not have known would be her final workplace. Investigation revealed that the killer had used a mattock, a farming tool found at the scene, to inflict the fatal wounds. The weapon showed signs of methodical cleaning between each murder, suggesting a calculated approach that defied the typical chaos of violent crime. Each victim had been struck with identical force and precision, as if following a predetermined protocol. The arrangement of the bodies in the barn demonstrated an unsettling attention to detail. Victims were positioned with their heads facing the same direction, their hands placed in identical positions across their chests. Straw had been scattered over them in geometric patterns that served no practical purpose for concealment. Forensic examination of the farmhouse revealed that the killer had spent considerable time in Andreas's study, examining family documents and financial records. Papers had been sorted into neat piles, and certain documents were missing entirely. The family's savings, substantial for rural farmers, remained untouched, ruling out robbery as a motive. The most chilling discovery came from the kitchen, where investigators found evidence that the killer had prepared and consumed multiple meals over several days. Plates had been washed and returned to their proper places, and the stove showed signs of regular use. Food had been prepared with the same care and routine the family would have employed. Witness statements from the surrounding area painted a picture of systematic observation preceding the murders. Several neighbors reported seeing a tall figure in dark clothing walking the roads near the Gruber property at unusual hours. This individual never responded to greetings and seemed to vanish when approached directly. The local priest mentioned that Andreas had recently sought counsel about feelings of being watched and followed. The farmer had become increasingly paranoid, checking and rechecking locks, and had begun sleeping with farm tools beside his bed. These precautions had proven inadequate against whatever force had ultimately claimed his family. Analysis of the crime scene revealed that the killer possessed intimate knowledge of the property's layout and the family's routines. The murders had been timed to occur when the family would naturally be gathered for evening chores, suggesting prolonged surveillance and planning. The perpetrator had also demonstrated knowledge of the local area's geography and social patterns. The extended stay at the property required understanding of when neighbors might visit and how to deflect suspicion. This suggested either a local resident or someone who had spent considerable time studying the community. Physical evidence indicated the killer was likely male based on the force required for the fatal injuries and the size of footprints found throughout the property. However, the methodical nature of the crimes and the domestic activities performed afterwards suggested psychological characteristics that defied typical criminal profiles. The investigation uncovered dozens of potential suspects, including family members, neighbors, and transient workers. Each lead dissolved under scrutiny, leaving investigators with a wealth of evidence but no credible perpetrator. The case files grew to enormous proportions, yet the core mystery remained impenetrable. Decades later, the Hinterkaifeck murders continue to challenge understanding of criminal behavior and human psychology. The killer's ability to live among the victims for days while maintaining normal appearances suggests a level of psychological detachment that borders on the inhuman. The case files, now housed in Munich's state archives, contain thousands of pages of testimony, evidence, and analysis. Yet for all the documentation, the central questions remain unanswered. The identity of the killer, the motive for such methodical brutality, and the psychological mechanisms that enabled such prolonged desecration of a family home continue to elude explanation. What do you think enabled someone to live among the bodies of an entire family while maintaining the facade of normal daily life? Share your thoughts on this disturbing case in the comments below. Subscribe for more investigations into the darkest corners of documented history.